Thank you, Isabella. I think you said everything that you needed to say, and I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful series, and also thank you to the WFTO team and all involved in bringing everyone together. And welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for sharing your time with me today. I'm going to be walking over and going through some trends with you, and we'll talk about how they work in different environments and I'm going to get started. And afterwards, we'll have time for Q&A to chat if you guys have any questions based off of anything or how the work can relate to what you guys do personally. I'm going to be talking about general trends for the fashion industry as a whole and how they can relate to fair trade businesses. And also, I'll be sharing a little bit of my work in the beginning, and then I'll be sharing the work of others and other field work so that we can see how all of it relates together. So I'm going to get started and share my screen and disappear for a while. So welcome to Gateway to Fair Trade Fashion Initiative. Um, we'll be sharing some trends with you. And again, thank you for being here. I want to begin by reframing the word trend because the way the industry uses it can be misleading, especially for makers, artisans, and fair trade businesses. A lot of people hear trend and think it means chasing what's new, copying what luxury brands are doing, or moving faster. But that is the fast fashion interpretation of trends, and it's not the most useful definition for you. A more accurate definition is a trend is a cultural signal. It's evidence. It's a visible outcome of deeper forces, economics, climate realities, technology, shifting identity, and the emotional temperature of society. So today, we're not going to go through all the trends like it's a shopping list. We're going to treat trends like intelligence, information that helps you design with clarity and speak to global markets with confidence. For context, my own training started in architecture before fashion. Architecture teaches you something critical. Design is not just style, it's systems, it's durability, it's context, it's how humans live and how their needs evolve. In my approach to fashion and design, I work from a system of research, translation, prototyping, execution, and storytelling. My work is built around sharing stories of pre colonial Africa, rituals, African architecture, and artisanal craftsmanship. The goal of my work is to reinterpret traditions into modern contemporary forms. This image is where my journey began. I use leather as a second skin to tell stories of adornment and scarification. Though the inspiration is rooted in history, the design remains contemporary. I think of the global impact my design will have with the world as a whole, and focus on sharing my story and my cultural history with timelessness. I design for today, but I never forget the foundation and understanding that we always want to work to live on. We want our work to live on. To design globally, we must create work that transcends beyond ourselves. Creating a systems mindset is key and extremely relevant right now because global fashion and home markets are in a period where a lot of the old rules are starting to break down. According to the Business of Fashion and McKinsey State of Fashion 2026, fashion leaders are operating in an environment of ongoing volatility, trade disruption, economic pressure, and changing consumer priorities. The report describes consumers as increasingly seeking value, redirecting spending toward well being and longevity, and becoming more cautious overall. That matters for you because fair trade, craft, heritage, and responsible production are not extra. They directly connect to what buyers and customers are now looking for, as long as you present them the right way. So, the goal of this session is simple. One, to understand what is shaping design globally right now. Two, to translate those forces into color, material, product direction, and storytelling. And three, to give you a framework you can actually use at trade shows, in buyer meetings, on product pages, and in visual representation. And if you take one thing from today, it's this: you do not need to imitate the West or the formula that has already been established to enter global markets. The market is hungry for credible originality, and you already have it. The global creative landscape and what's shaping design now. Now we zoom out and look at the world around us and see the global creative landscape. What's shaping us in fashion and what's shaping us in home? I want to name 5 forces that are currently showing up repeatedly across forecasting, buyer behavior, and editorial culture. The first one is the post-crisis aesthetics, which is based around soft luxury, and we're calling that one restorative refinement. This has a lot to do with reflecting what's going on in the world and wanting to feel a sense of peace and a sense of warmth and being held because of all the negativity that's happening in the world. After years of instability, consumers are drawn to objects that soothe, not boring, but calming. Products that reduce friction, shapes that feel embracing, and materials that feel honest. This is why we've seen the rise of soft luxury, not loud status, but quiet sophistication through finish, proportion, and tactility. When we look at restorative refinement, these are the key categories in which, and the key items in which we're seeing emerging in the market. We know that we're looking at soft silhouettes, the colors are a little bit more quiet, and the materials have a texture to them, in this case, brush materials. So the key items that we're looking forward in that we would want to design into, and of course, make our own versions of it. For instance, if you're someone who doesn't do leather, it could be possibly trying to mimic those textures or possibly mimic the silhouettes in the techniques that you use. But the matte leather clutch, the brush suede handbag, which could be a lot of different variations of this. These are, of course, samples of what it would look like. But you see that overall, the feeling is very polished and very muted, but and the clothing is softer. Things would drape, things that just kind of skim the silhouette are things that we're looking at. When we're looking at things like furniture, we have a boucle sofa. Of course, it's still solid white, but there's a texture going on. And so those are the kind of things that we're kind of seeing in the market with ceramics being sculptural and artistic and kind of unpolished and imperfect. And you can see the same kind of level of imperfection in the stone coffee table. And when it comes to jewelry, things just being very, very minimal and almost hand done and barely there jewelry that you can see. So this obviously can be translated in a lot of different ways, but restorative refinement is just all about a kind of silent confidence that's remaining. It's been emerging for a while now, and this is just a trend that's continuing to carry on. So that's why we're starting there first. The second one is craft as status, which is built off of contemporary elegance. And we're calling this one heritage re-engineered. This is one of the clearest signals right now. Vogue Business literally framed it as craft became the new flex, because as prices rise, people are more discerning and demand proof of value. Craftsmanship becomes a visible way to justify price and rebuild trust. This directly supports fair trade makers, but there's a condition. Craft must be positioned as contemporary excellence, not handmade equals rustic. Though handmade is the ultimate in luxury, it must be continuously presented as top tier in order for the association to be made. The work always must be visually presented in a way that aligns with its quality. That is a non-negotiable. It's always about perception. If we look at heritage re-engineered, the things that we want to focus in this alignment are handmade textures and visible craft, things that look like they took some time to do, some effort, and natural fibers. And looking at these things and thinking of ways to elevate them or add small details to them so they kind of look refreshing or something new. And we have the woven leather bag. This is, I mean, it could even be considered a classic item, but it's an item that would never go away. And it's just in a new, slightly different silhouette. But I think that that's something that's always reoccurring. And when you see this, it's not about, creating the newest thing that no one's seen before, but it's about taking the craftsmanship that's already there and elevating it and creating something that's like re-engineered into something new. So we see the raffia tote. We've seen many raffia totes. This one is a little bit more special, but of course there's so many ways to rethink of how we would use that material. The crocheted handbag now just updated just with the jewelry strap at the top. So these things are just little touches that we can do to kind of be more on trend and take something from looking a little bit more traditional and moving it forward into something more contemporary. So we have the hand carved wooden chair. This is an item that's probably a timeless item that's always been around, but the new curvature makes it look new and fresh. It still looks handmade, but the shape looks modern. And just thinking about different light fixtures and furniture, embroideries, and that woven belt using people who do weaving techniques, turning accessories into more contemporary things that we may find in some of the luxury markets. And just kind of just rethinking things. It's never going too far. It's always starting with the base of what you already have and just adding a few contemporary touches just to elevate what it is that you have. The next force is the consumer's value filter, and this is based off of quality, curated consumption. In McKinsey's State of Fashion 2026, it points out continued value conscious behavior with consumers reconsidering spending and brands needing to offer value across segments. So the market is not simply premium or cheap, it's explain your price. The best brands right now can answer, why is this worth it? This is a follow-up to the previous slide. Setting prices requires market strategy and research strategy. You must honor your time and the time it makes to make all the goods that you do, but also understand that the consumer needs to actually see the value in what you're making. The object should look expensive visually and by design. This trend falls into the lines of it's very similar actually to the first restorative trend, but this is about having things that are just timeless and slightly updated. And so here, this is a focus on timeless pieces that are always constant, investment objects, things that, over time will increase their value and durability. So everything in here is just a reflection of things that last and looking at items that have been around, not really reinventing or creating something new. Again, we're never really trying to look and make something entirely new. It's just looking at the past. And this is where we are right now because we feel that we want to hold on a little bit to the past while we're moving towards our future. And so all of these trends that are emerging are all, based off of this, desire for vintage and desire for things that we feel like we're moving so fast, we're losing all of these things. So we have this structured leather tote, the tailored waistcoat, all of these are classics. And that's how I would kind of, view this inspiration. All of it is based off of classic styling and things that endure. The fourth inspiration is well-being and peace. Again, this is an ongoing theme that we're seeing. And I think it's going to, especially right now with the ways of the world and everything that's going on, I think that there's a craving towards wanting to feel safety and wanting to feel calm. And so people making purchases right now, which are very thoughtful, people are not spending money as much as they used to because everything has to have some kind of meaning and some kind of purpose. And I think that that this theme in particular speaks about the peace that we're all looking for inside. Well-being is now becoming central to identity and spending, with consumers drawn to brands that offer emotional connections. When it comes to artisanal work, We look at the story of the artisan setting the tone for the emotional connection. That story is important, but in today's society, there has been a shift in what resonates with people. People are in a state of wanting to protect their peace and slowly moving more inward. So products are evaluated emotionally. Does this calm me? Does this align with who I want to be? Does this feel like a better choice? It's more about the consumer and how they feel that the force is driving these purchases. So when we get into this theme, it's definitely about neutral tones, very light, feeling secure, feeling grounded in everything that we have, a lot of hand work in ceramics, things that have raw edges, things that are not finished all the way, fabrics like linen. We have a meditation cushion, things that offer peace. So here's a great place to offer, items that we see that can help people in life. Something that, can soothe you, something that can make your life better, and approaching design in that way. What can I do to make you more comfortable? What can I make? What's something I can bring to the table that will bring comfort? That's a trend that we're seeing moving forward, and I think that it's going to be a very strong one, especially with the state of the world that it is right now. And finally, we have the swing away from sameness, which is individuality. We call this theme signature culture because minimalism has been kind of evolving. It's been around for quite some time now, and it's become stronger and stronger. And this is more towards the future. I would say 2027 and beyond is where we're going to start seeing this idea of individualism and maximalism coming back to life, and people wanting things that are more unique and not looking for something that's quiet, more so looking for something that speaks to you. um, we're seeing strong counter movements, more personality, more print, more expressive styling in certain markets. Pinterest 2025 forecasting coverage noted that trend movement leaning towards maximalism is where we're going towards the future. And as we see, things always cycle. Things have been quiet for a long time. So it's only going to make sense that we're going to go to the other side of the spectrum. So this is where, we want to create things that have a little bit more character, that are like almost little pieces of work, artwork, and pieces that, are statement pieces. And so here is where I think, you could have a little, I mean, all of them are fun, but this, you can have a little bit more fun here with trying things that are a little bit more outside the box. And so the whole idea of designing into signature culture is about creating things that you wouldn't normally find everywhere else, but they're very special, and ultimately approaching design like you're creating a little work of art. And so it's still the same sensibilities that we want everywhere else. There's still a touch of minimalism and elegance in the things that we're creating. But as we can see, there's like more print, more adornment, more detailing. And not, this is not for the consumer who wants to hide. This is for the consumer who's interested in sharing themselves with the world and letting themselves be seen. Um, Before I skip into color real quick, actually, let me go back. Oh, sorry. No, okay, I'm skipping over, but I'll just talk while I'm going. So the landscape, when we talk about all those five trends, it's not just one aesthetic that we're going to be looking for. It's tension. It's calm versus expression, restraint versus individuality, and softness versus statement. Your job is to decide where your brand sits and to make that choice intentional. You don't even necessarily have to pick one or two. You can pick as many trends as you want, but I think it's better to focus on probably not more than two, and really think about, your brand, and does it, sit well in these areas? Can I make product that, sits well in these areas? There's no reason to try to do them all. It's more of a focus of picking a trend that, speaks to you and works well with you, and deciding where you want to go. to be legible to buyers, you really have to connect your work with the current values. And that's what all of these trends are based on. The values right now are craft as value, authenticity as premium, emotional durability, and systems thinking. So I jumped ahead a little bit, but we're going to start talking about color, material, and textural directions. Um, so this is more so about building our sensory identity and with real forecast anchors. So color equals emotion plus strategy. We now get a more concrete idea of how do these cultural signals translate into color, material, and texture direction. Right now, we're going to reference two companies, Colro and WGSN, which looks at colors ahead of time and decides, what the colors of the year are and the colors that are going to be important. And for those who I'm sure a lot of people probably know, but this year it's all about transformative teal, and just the name itself, transformative. That's the whole theme that also aligns with everything that we've just discussed. Color today is being used less like a seasonal novelty and more like emotional messaging. So this year, the transformative teal, I would say that it kind of signals change with stability. And that's exactly what we're living through culturally right now. People want evolution, but they also want grounding. So again, there's always this tension of moving forward, but moving forward while paying attention to what's in the past. Um, Alongside transformative teal, the other key colors for 2026, cocoa powder, wax paper, green glow, fresh purple, blue aura, jelly mint, and transformative teal, like we said. And cocoa powder is about grounding and permanence. Wax paper is to read as elevated and modern. And green glow is about optimistic energy without neon harshness. And fresh purple is an accent color that reads emotional and future facing. The list also includes Blue Aura, which is about micro moments of joy, along with Jelly Mint. So all of these colors have meanings and they have a purpose. And it's not necessarily to use all of the colors at once. And again, picking a few key colors that maybe make sense for your brand and your identity, and also building upon that to create a color palette is something that can work for you. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about color building based off of what the key colors are this season. You don't really need like 20 colors to build a collection. Key colors showcase some of the colors you can choose to focus on in your design, but all of the key colors do not need to be part of the creation process. The colors you choose, like we said, should be part of your color family, and it needs to read coherent and intentional. Before we start designing a group or collection, we should always have our color story established so that while we're creating and designing, everything always looks cohesive, at least by color. And this is really to help buyers buy more of your product. If they come and they look at all the different things that you're doing and they match and they go together and they feel like, wow, I need this clutch bag because I need it to match with this bag. And then these earrings match with this ring, probably buy more things from you than looking at things individually and everything is in different colors and not really sitting well together, because in their minds they always want to be merchandising the store properly so that when you walk into the store everything looks like it's together, everything looks like it's cohesive. And so when designers present that way and make the lives of the buyers a little bit easier, I think it helps you get more products sold. So when we're building color, and I just started with some easy three color palettes. There's two separate ones using the colors that are the key colors of the season, but again, starting with one anchor neutral, which would be the wax paper ivory color. Always having a neutral tone in there, and sometimes that neutral in another space and time it could be tan, in another space of time it could be a khaki color or anything else that's a neutral. So just having that as a base, and then having a grounding deep color, which, here we have the cocoa brown and the deep teal. Those are the two grounding colors, the transformative teal. But again, that could be a burgundy, it could be a black. It just depends on how, things are going. And then you have your accent color, which is your pop, which kind of would be the fun color, the color that brings everything together. And of course, you can add more colors to this, especially for people who do weaving. You may need a lot more colors to create, a print that you want to use in something that you're creating. And so all of this is individual and however it works for you. But I would never really go above 7 colors, at least in the beginning, because the whole point of every time when you're creating and every time you're making is thinking of cohesion and how I can translate things to reflect myself in the most cohesive way. This really creates a longevity and brand recognition. Starting with 3 colors is just going to keep you focused. Um, and looking up color meetings, like the way that we just discussed, like what those colors meant, all of that is like part of your story and part of your storytelling, which we're going to go into, that, really helps, tell that story and keep people interested in what it is that you're doing and what you're providing when you design. Materials and surfaces. Again, along with all the trends that we're seeing, natural and refined is one of the core directions that we're also seeing. And these materials and surfaces and these colors, they're used all along with the inspirations and the key trends that we've already discussed. So all of these can fall into those things. Um, Materials are now part of the value proof. When consumers question pricing, the material story must be obvious. Consumers no longer accept premium pricing without proof, and that craft storytelling explains the price and educates the consumer. So, your materials need 2 things: authenticity, which is, real fibers, real handiwork, handwork, origin, and clarity, and 2, refinement. So, in this image here, we have like the raw edge, but then it's finished into a clean embroidery. That's what we're talking about. Those are the key things that we're going to keep discussing as we go along, how to create something that is rooted in the past, but also looks modern. So we're always looking at these contrasting ideas. We want to show the craftsmanship. We want to show the original ideas of where things came from. And then we also want to move those forward. And I think whenever you can have that in whatever you're designing, whatever you're creating, then that's when you really win, because you're able to create a uniqueness instead of, reinterpreting the old just as it is. Or it just really keeps and helps you, stay unique. Um, we're seeing this same high level direction across markets, reclaimed regenerative materials, and matte surfaces with tactile weaves. And so when we get into tactility, texture and touch, the surface texture is so important today because so much purchasing power, all of it happens digitally. Lookbooks are digital now. We're living in a digital world. And so the texture just has to be visually legible in what it is that we're creating. And that is the trend, and that's where we're moving towards, since people are going to the store less, even though in-store shopping is always going to be important. But having texture to all of these things that we're creating, the first theme had, it was softer. It was boucle that we talked about with the couch. Even though it looked like it was solid, there was still some texture there. There was the brush suede. All of it is always there. So being able to show those ideas throughout every single theme is really, really important, because it just draws the consumer in, and it's just where we're going as far as design. It doesn't mean that smooth surfaces are not going to be important, but especially with what we do, I think the texture always looks exciting. And the fact that in the future, we're going to be moving towards a place where people need to see the details of the surface design. This is just something that should remain a constant every single time. And through the season, it'll be classic. The textures really have to show scale. They have to show the surface, the edge details, and how light behaves across the material. The hand must be visible. The work must be visible. And this is an ongoing trend that, is going to continue. We're really designing for, the future. And all of these silhouettes, forms, product direction, we're designing for longevity um, in a value-driven market. And the more and more we go, people are going to want to see that quality for the price. Um, and I think when we're approaching design and creativity, we should be thinking about designing for 5 years, not 5 months. Now we shift into form and product direction. And this is where we can become extremely competitive because consistency and longevity is a market advantage right now. Many of you are incredible craftsmen who have been working on your craft for decades. This is where you can show the fruits of your labor and speak to a market in search of new ways to visualize and consume materials. So, what does designing for longevity look like in practical terms? For fashion and accessories, it's relaxed tailoring that accommodates real bodies. Again, this is an ongoing trend that is not going to stop. People are going to want comfort. Whenever we're in times of unrest, people's clothes kind of open up a little bit, they get looser. You can take this idea into accessories where, things just become a little bit more soft. This idea is going to, probably keep going. But for fashion and accessories, this is one of the key takeaways. Modular pieces that work in multiple contexts, thinking of ways that people can get value, a two for one item. Really just modular design. A lot of times we see modular design in furniture a lot, but now in fashion, things that are like a scarf that you can wear as a top and you can wear it as a belt. Um, Things like bracelets that you can pull apart and then wear it, in two ways, or rings that can do that. That kind of design thinking, that's like a key item that is definitely going to move forward. And then having things that are adjustable sizing, ties, wraps, elastic systems, a scarf that can be worn as a bag. All these ideas of being able to shift in and out of things and creating value, creating items that create value for the consumers. A consumer buys one thing, they can use it multiple ways. This is the trend that is going to be moving forward because people are going to care a lot more about what they're buying and the value for the product that they're getting. Layering systems that respond to the climate and unpredictability all around the world. The climate has changed. It's hotter in some areas. It's colder in other areas. People are thinking about all this climate change and things that become convertible, hoods that disappear, a bag that, maybe is sold with another poncho kind of bag that's around it that can protect it if it starts raining. Just all these ideas, again, kind of utility ideas that are kind of emerging in the market, and that we're seeing that people want purpose to the things in which they buy. People want things to mean things. People want uses out of, the things that they're purchasing now. So the value systems, all the things that we said, everything that is happening in the world is about what we need and what we need for protection, what we need to live. It's until times, I think, become brighter again. I think that these purchases are going to be rooted in these ideas. So when we get to home decor, we need to we also, the same idea kind of translates over multi-use objects. This is a little storage space that's built inside these chairs. Everything is about, multiple uses, and so think about that a lot. Like simple things like a lariat necklace that can now turn into a little belt. Always these ideas of being able to change and move forward. Storage and beauty, items, basketry, carving, vessels that can contain things, are organic in shape and are beautifully handmade and can have a function. Things that, they're not just objects, but there's always a function, a use to everything that we're making. That's what we're seeing emerging in the market. Value. Sculptural functionality, another thing that's emerging in home decor. Having a vase that, also is a sculptural piece if there's no flowers in it. And so thinking of, again, I'm going to say the same things over and over again and drill them, but to this whole idea of functionality and almost like creating art pieces that that are not only beautiful, but are able to function in society. And also soft architecture is something that's emerging. I thought these crochet chairs were really fun and something unique that I hadn't seen very often. But using these softer textures and being able to create something that's kind of new and different, things that kind of organize your space softly. And if you can see through all of these things, there's like a uniqueness to them. So things have to feel a little bit special and have a little bit more meaning. It's really makes the purchase feel smarter for the consumer. And in both fashion and home, the global direction is just toward systems. It's not only the single hero products, but product families, being able to build around any of these ideas and kind of relate, reorder, and have them reappear again. So really building your collections based off of these systems wouldn't really mean that every single item needs to be functional, or you have to be able to transform everything that you're creating to something different, but maybe having a key item where there's like one item or two items that have this functionality, and then you build the collection around it. So it's not about making everything with these ideas. It's about listening and kind of taking which ideas work for you and your brand and being able to build upon it, but also staying on trend by understanding that utility going forward is something that is important. And perhaps I should have something like that while I'm building my collection. We also want to think about things as being seamless, even though these are trends. It's always better to think of how to keep your brand timeless and seasonless, and without becoming repetitive. So creating a system where you have core product that you build upon, and that your seasonal movement kind of comes through adding new textures and a new craft, and a limited color accent, and also just like proportion variations in what it is that you're doing. So now we're going to talk about cultural storytelling and brand voice. Handmade is meaningful without cliches. This section is probably one of the most important parts because storytelling is where we're able to, create value and present ourselves to global buyers so that they understand what our brand is about, and what we're interested in. And a lot of times things get lost in cultural cliches when it comes to global brands. And things want to be represented a certain way because that's the way it's been seen in the past. But we're the ones who are in charge of the ways in which our stories are being told. And a lot of that is always going to come from how we choose to present our stories with the world. And so storytelling it can easily go wrong. You know, the cliche just becomes ethnic branding, and then it becomes this surface level symbolism and these ideas that, oh, this means that means that, and then you lose the meaning overall. We need to translate heritage without cliches by building modern narratives. This is just the market reality. As customers get more discerning, they want proof, process, credibility, and not just claims. And this is the way that we can educate our audience about who we are and what we're really about, and really just take authorship of the storytelling on our own. And so in order to do this, we have to create a system of origin, process, purpose, and emotion. And we're going to use this system while we share our stories. Origin is not just geography, it's context. Who's the maker? What tradition or technique is involved? And what is the lineage of the skill? Those always have to be present when we're discussing our story. The process. Process is your proof of value. It shows the steps, it shows the time, it shows materials, it shows hands, it shows tools. I think that that is very common. And when we look at marketing in artisanal brands, There's always close-up shots of hands, working on something. Those are common things. I think people have gotten very used to those things. So the trends that are emerging is storytelling that is a way to show that is not the typical version of like a close-up shot on hands doing something, but finding ways to be more creative about how we share that kind of information. And and then the purpose. The purpose answers, why does this exist now? Not because it's traditional. That's not enough of a reason. It has to meet a modern need. Some of the needs that we discussed: durability, modularity, repairability, comfort, usability, and meaning. And always having a touch of that in how we address and how we talk about things. And emotion. Emotion. How are we making the customers feel? When we create images and put them out in the world, we have to look at them and we have to see, how does this image make me feel? Do I feel some kind of way? Is it provoking something? It should. And so all of this, because we're getting swamped into a sea of so much information. Everybody has access to the internet. Everybody has Instagram pages. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people will be using AI. How will you stand? How will you be unique? And a lot of it is being able to answer these questions and show really creative and unique, distinctive ways to represent your work that doesn't look like everyone else's. And so that is moving forward. Visual imagery is going to be so key because it's going to be so much easier for everyone to have good images because of AI, if it can be used properly. And so it's really, really important to focus on creating a system that is unique to your brand, because if not, it'll be stuck in a sea of everything that's going on. So one of the trends is definitely being able to, see where marketing and visual tools are moving towards the future. Here's just some examples that I had pulled that I felt they were artisanal, but I really like the way that they showed the work that they do. Here was the dyeing. I mean, it was still fashion. You can still tell it's showing craftsmanship. It's showing the actual work of the pieces that have been made. And then, but it also looks like fashion too. It also looks like something that you'd see in a magazine spread that you would love to look at. So just being able to find ways to tell those stories. We know that this is about indigo. We know that this is about dyeing. We know that there's craftsmanship in the layout. So again, being able to just share those things visually, moving forward. And here again, and also with the last one, the connection is also always about having something that's modern with something that's traditional. And so here we have these handbags, we have this look. We know that it's somewhere foreign to where we are, but it also looks like something that we can all relate to. And being able to capture those different points and being able to share work in that way, it's not just the artisan who made it and is in a photo, because there's been a lot of photos like that, but it's transcending and moving forward where now we're thinking about how we want our work presented in other ways, in addition to, not to get rid of those images, but to also add on it so that we can compete with the direction of the world where creativity is becoming just more people are going to have access to creativity. So we have to stay on top of being able to create. So I felt like this brand did a good job of being able to, showcase their bags in a way that it still looks like traditional, but it also looks like something new. And then the same here, this concept of this basketry, which looks a little new and a little different, as opposed to having just a traditional image. And so I think, especially with AI tools, being able to play around and captivate a look for your brand that's very unique to you is something that definitely has to be explored as time goes on. So now we're going to talk about designing for trade shows and buyers, and turning creativity into market power. Trade shows are high pressure environments. Buyers are moving fast. Attention is scarce. Um, it's always great to start with a checkpoint Is my collection understandable in 60 seconds? Um, just run a practical script in your mind while you set up your booth and in your line sheets and getting ready to talk with buyers. Um, I think a lot of buyers in their minds, when they approach design, they're thinking the first questions that they're asking is, what category am I looking at? What's the design idea? What's this brand signature? What's the price logic? Who is this for? And can I sell this quickly and confidently? So the design work is not finished until the presentation is very coherent. And that's what we've been talking about over and over again. And that's why it's important to have a mood board. It's important to have a color story. It's important to have all these things because it really helps focus everything that you're doing so that when a buyer does come, they see everything as a group. And you want to give them no choice but to have to buy everything because it looks so good together. And that's how it should be thought. Instead of looking at things individually as individual pieces that they'll just pick up here and there. Um, Questions will always come up. Why this price? The buyer will question durability, uniqueness, margins, story, sell through, and confidence in the product. And to win, the product must be clear. You're always looking for clarity. Um, it has to have clear product architecture, clear story, and clear proof of quality. There has to be a presentation hierarchy. We just talked recently about, not everything has to have a that utilitarian kind of idea around it. Perhaps one or two items. That those would be like the top tier, the things at the top, and then creating your most signature pieces, and also having a supporting system and showing the variations around it. And so, building a collection, I'm going to show some variations of merchandising, and you want buyers to just have a concept that they can sell, not just objects. And so translating these trends, again, I'm trying to talk about things from a whole system of how you start at the trend, you focus your colors, you think about all the things that need to be in there, the details that are important based off of the bodies that we talked about. You decide and you merchandise all of those things together, and then you present it in a way where the colors are tight, where you have decided which items you're going to, focus on and build a collection, and you merchandise all of it together so that you're able to talk at least about one trend that you're bringing into your design. And it'll show that you've done research, which actually I didn't talk about in the beginning, but that's probably one of the biggest things of showing, of taking it to the next level, is showing that you've done research to create what you're creating. It didn't just come from the sky. It's not just a craft that was passed down and you're just making something. You've done real research on what your ancestors have created and the meanings that were put into their work. You looked at it against the trends that were going on in society, and then you created this thing based off of all of those elements. And so merchandising just really has to be a key. And I think going forward, especially with buyers nowadays, we want to make their lives as easy as possible. We want, when they come and they look at our booths, that everything kind of makes sense and everything feels like a need more than a want. And providing those details with merchandising. So this is just one small group. Of course, we can do this lots of different ways, but I just put together something quick based off of the material being shell, or some kind of fake bone material, something raw, how you would present something that's accessories and a little bit of home mixed all together, having something based in color, which this one specifically is. It's just saying that we're going to speak to ivory as the tone. We know that it's about hand carving, so you can speak about the technique that was done to create these things, creating the story around it. You can talk about the theme. It could be based in actually across. I guess actually all of them could work in this case. And you can talk about why, what that meant, and creating these unique items. And then you have a story that you're telling, and it's rooted in something very real. We know that we want this sense of calmness. That is why we created these items that are reminiscent of the sea and reminiscent of being able to talk about things that relate in a way to what's kind of going on is in the storytelling is really what is always going to set your brand apart. And the storytelling, again, even though you guys already have a core story of the artisans, you know, they're like the major part of the story because it's so unique to have this handwork, and that's already wonderful. But now you take it a step further with the why in which we're making these things, you know, and what we're trying to celebrate and what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to show to the world with our work. Another example, this is something more colorful based off of crochet. Um, Again, it's a collection. It's a little bit more eclectic because all of these pieces are kind of different and work together in different ways, but they still sit together. You know, if you came to a booth and it had all of these different items in there, they would still work. And again, the technique itself is what is a tradition, but everything that's been made here is something very modern that can sit somewhere today, can be in a summer collection, and can also be in a collection next summer. And it would still be fine, and it would still look relevant, and it would still work. And having that real durability in your work and the sustainability in your work is what you're always trying to achieve. So it's not following a trend to the limit where it's something that dies, but it's really finding a way to balance between having some of the trend in your work, but always the core focus is on being timeless and being classic, because you don't want work that you can't ever use again. You know, you want to be able to have things that have a consistency. Like, for instance, if I had these earrings one season, there's no reason why I can't bring it back the next season and make it in orange, you know, or I can bring back the same necklace and then, the same earring and make a bigger loop at the bottom and just a little touch to it. And so you're just building upon yourself in that way. So even though trends are important to know what's going on in the world and how to relate things, the core purpose is to take the trend and translate it into something classic that can always be in your collection, or that you can always build upon. Seasonless and responsible innovation. This is more so not about the materials of sustainability, but just using the strategy of stability of sustainability as a growth strategy. And this also has to do with what we just talked about. You know, using these trends. Trends are important, but it's important to use the trends as they relate to you and as they relate to your brand, and how to grow your brand by not always having to do a whole new thing every single season, but having core pieces that you grow upon and then continue to use, and then also adding new pieces to it. Um, we need to build systems. In 2026 conditions, we have to understand that growth is projected to remain low and consumers are really cautious, as I've been saying over and over. So this spring, summer, we should design pieces that matter and that live beyond the current season. For someone to make a purchase, it really needs to feel special. And so I'm gonna, always, keep saying those things. And when we think about sustainability, the things that we talked about on the themes before, modular design, that's something that's core that can always be sustainable, and that is also a trend. Reorderable cores, customization models, and small batch design that is limited in quantity. So this is really how ethical brands kind of scale. It's not about creating newness all the time, but really figuring out what your cores are, the things that sell well, bringing them back and designing upon those things within the new trend, and continuing to grow and building sustainability, because that's how you have consistency, and that's also how you set a signature, and finding out what your core items are and how you can elevate those things every single time. So basically what I'm saying is, like, taking a core item, if you sell baskets really well, for instance, and you always make them a certain way, then the next season putting it in the transformative teal, a color perhaps that you haven't used before. So these little things are like increments. It's not to change everything that you're doing dramatically, but it's to add touches that are there into your collections. I think when you really communicate all these things well, that's when the buyer is really gonna, want to purchase things from you. It's really about, like I said, making their life easier, because the buyer really responds to the story and how you made everything. And what the story is behind how you made everything. That's actually more important to them than the item itself, because they want to make sure that they can continuously buy from you over and over again. So having that consistency is also what they're always going to be, interested in, and not just looking at things like an item. You want to become something that they need, because you're actually going to bring something to the store. You're going to bring um, your collection to the store and elevate things by being there, and not just something to throw in here and there that would get lost in their assortment. So again, that's why merchandising is key. That's why sustainable design, in the sense of creating things that last, creating a core, being able to build upon things that sold before. That's what I mean by sustainability and moving on. So in practice, we're going to look at how all of this kind of comes together, and look at the inspiration, the cultural shifts, and knowing that everything is kind of based off of cultural shifts, climate, and technology. We're going to move into our trends again, just to recap. So restorative refinement, that's based on a level of comfort that we're looking for. A level of polish is where we see in that system. Heritage Reengineered is really focusing on crafts and reimagining them. So everything is kind of rooted in the design of the original design, and then taking it to a modern place. And then curated consumption, really thinking about value and timelessness and things that can stay around for a long time. And enduring calm, which is based off of kind of just wanting comfort and wanting peace and everything that you design. And then looking more towards the future, we're about to cycle back into a little bit more maximalism, where things are a little bit fun, things are a little bit more forward, things are more unique, things are more distinctive. And so we're just going to walk through like how we can kind of use these moods within our work. And I'm going to do an example of signature culture, so we can look a little bit more ahead as we do spring summer 26 collections and moving forward, because we know that this one is definitely coming, and the other ones will still remain as well. And again, you can also mix two different themes together. It doesn't have to be one. But I created a mood board. You see, it's not about just using what the image was. This can be based off of anything, but the idea is what you're trying to capture. And so for this whole signature, we're building our mood board based off of themes that we've explored from the trend and the desire to reject minimalism and refrain from following others and being part of the crowd. We know that signature culture is about individuality and creativity. And so that's what we're trying to achieve, with the mood board here. We know it needs to be eclectic. We know that it needs to be fun. We know that it represents like somebody who has their own unique kind of identity, and it can be done in so many different ways. This is just one representation of what it could look like. And it doesn't have to reflect the original picture. All you're doing is capturing the mood, the temperature of what it is that we talked about. And we just know that, when we create a mood board, the whole essence of it is to be thinking about the person who we're designing for. And every time we're looking at that mood board, what we should be thinking in our mind is, who is this person? We know they like original things. We know they don't want to look like anybody else. They're very individualistic, and what does that look like? And what would I make for somebody who wants things like that? And always approaching design with those questions. That's really what we're going to be trying to do. Like when we're creating our mood boards and thinking about how we're designing, it's always answering questions about who is she, what does she like, and or he or they, and where are they going. And so we look at our own brand to guide us and move on. So here I decided that I would use the color story just as is. And so the color story would be based off of like these 5 colors, and designing into this and seeing how it could work and how it could translate. And so These are items that I gathered based off of that inspiration. So if you really truly look at it, the color story has been followed. There's a cocoa brown, there's a transformative teal, there's some accents in there, but everything still sits well and merchandises together. The themes are there. When we talked about um, the the idea of signature culture. Some of the key things were having, unique artistic earrings, decorative items. It talked about having fringe, and so we see two little fringe clutch bags at the bottom. It talked about the about things being unique. Everything, these little cactus ideas, all of them are very unique. So we've still followed within the themes of what it is and the themes of our mood board, but it reflects what the theme is, and this is what it could look like if you did accessories or whatever items that you include in your collections. So it's just being able to tell the story from what it is that we've seen. We know that it's on trend. And then looking back again, if we put our mood board next to the items that we've created, um, you know, there was that home piece of that, cactus, turning it into a bag, the earrings, the whole idea of like shell, seeing some of those materials being used. And so always referencing back to see if you actually captured the idea that was behind the mood board and behind the theme. And again, using the colors to anchor everything together. So that's how you would see it. The colors are not based off of the mood board; they're based off of what the trend colors were. So that's what we're looking at here. So that's really, how you'd see everything as a whole. And a store might want to buy the two different cactus bags because one is beaded and one is in the basket material. And so all of these things like would sit well together in a space, and it would look very tight and cohesive, but they're all still unique and individualistic, which is what the theme, required. So in closing, before I open up to some questions, I just want to say that we have to understand that we are positioning ourselves as global voices, and global voices need to be heard with stories, and they need to be seen. I want to return to the core message that global markets do not need more imitation; they need more credibility and unique identities. Society's discussion of the quiet luxury era highlights that when aesthetics become too uniform, people crave originality and emotion again. So we see that everything is always, cyclical, and that's really how we can look at trends. Like we know that, when things get quiet, they will eventually come back to being loud again, and then there's a lot of, little steps along the way. But everything always circles back in fashion. Things are always recycled. And everything is always contrasting, and you can see that in the themes that we talked about today. And we pull from this knowledge to create pieces that are sustainable and don't wave with the passing trends. That's really important. And just still remain relevant as time goes on. So your advantage is that you can lead if you present your work with modern clarity. Your roots are not a limitation, they're really your innovation lab, and consistency matters more than chasing trends. Identity matters more than hype. So, thank you guys, and I'm going to end this here, and we can discuss some of the things that um, we talked about.
Oh, wow. This was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Mimi. I think we all learned a lot, and there's a lot to unpack. I'm going to look at the chat to see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions per se. So, you guys, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask the questions you want for Mimi. Again, I think I need to digest this first. I think I'm going to take the time to go through the slides again, maybe a few times, because it was packed with so many very interesting informations. But if you have any questions right now, feel free to unmute yourself and so that Mimi can respond.
Or if there's anything that you guys want to hear more about, or just, I tried to make it in general, but uh, let's see that question.
Yes, somebody, Yana is asking, are there any specific color variation expected to dominate the 2027 season?
So 2027, now this is just me talking because WGSN and those services, they're not free, and they talk about 2 years ahead about what's going on in the fashion industry and those kind of comments. So what I'm telling you, the first one I gave you was based off of their recommendation, which in the industry, some people use it, some people don't. But what I would tell you is that right now, because the colors are so muted, this is the way all designers work, because designers work out ahead. I mean, usually we work 1 to 2 years ahead of what we're doing. So for me, because everything is muted right now, I can just tell you that the color variations are going to be bolder next season. To give you specific colors, I mean, it can range. So I don't want to say it's going to be red or it's going to be purple, all I can tell you is that it's going to be a lot bolder because we're moving towards maximalism. So that means that any color that's like a dark, deep, vibrant color is probably going to be okay. And like I said, I don't know, I personally don't believe in following trends to the T like that. I think it's just information to have, and not get caught in, well, they said purple is good, so I have to do purple in my line or something like that, because I think that that can sometimes trap you. So I don't know. I'm just being honest about those things.
Oh, absolutely agreed. And I have been paying the money sometimes for those predictions. So yeah, it gives you a why, a history, the colors and the palettes and the this and the that. And then you come to the collection and you see what is in the runway or what is actually in the store. And it's never a match or a perfect match. There is some things when you can find from the prediction to the actual store floor, but I think it's more as a inspiration, a general trend, and they're trying to give some particular colors to use and this and that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pantone will come up with the color of the year, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's
But
just to know that you can go and find it if you want to. But I think what's more important is to understand the shifts in the world and what's happening, and then addressing things, thinking of trends in that way. So I know that if right now people want protection, people want to be more quiet, people want to be more subtle, and because of what's happening, and you think about, okay, what's it going to be like 6 months from now? Are we still going to be in this place, or do we think we're going to be in a better place? Are people happy? If people are happier, then the colors are going to be brighter. That's really how we're working trends all the time. Like, you're actually working from how you're seeing things in the world. So that's why, for to be, I think, a designer, you have to look at what's happening in the world. It's very important. You're not just making things; you are addressing what's happening on in the world, and that's why research is really key. And that's what people don't understand. They think that designers are just, you just make the things that you like or that are pretty or this and that. I think the really good designers are like, okay, this is the temperature right now. This is what people are concerned about right now. And how do I address it? So that's the trends. That's why I said it's more of a cultural trend. Those things like the colors and all that, like those are the things that people say and they sell and they do those things. But trust me, if you build a great collection, it won't, nobody will care if you don't have the color of the year in there, or the recommended colors in there. But it's just, I wanted to give the information because it's there. But um but I think it's more important to look at the climate and address it. Look at how people, the temperature of how people are feeling, and address it. I think that that's a better way to start getting in tune with the story you want to tell, and how the colors reflect the story you want to tell, or what's happening in the world and how you want to reflect what's happening in the world.
okay, I have a question actually. So of course, this is all centered around fashion. But I have a feeling that we could extend that a little bit to home decor, to accessories as well, maybe gifts, etc. I I don't believe per se at the like a real cut between the different product categories, actually. What do you think, Mimi, about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that every single theme that we said is for all the categories. It's for everything because you see the same thing happening in home where, like, if you looked at some of the themes that we did before, there was always a home piece in there. So for instance, just the signature culture, like everything was a little bit more abstract and more artistic looking. That was reflective of actually how it would work in fashion. I think that when you look at, because I mean, there's predictive services for home as well. They're always very similar to what's going on in fashion. You're still a designer. You're still approaching your practice like, this is what's happening in the world, and this is how I want to address it. You know, that's really what it is. Or this is my culture, and this is how I want to share it. And so, I see. Does it mean color trends doesn't really matter in collection? Um, if it doesn't matter to me, but it just depends on, how can I say this? I think it's good to understand what's happening, but but I don't think that people are holding you to it. I don't think that's going to make or break your collection at all. I think what's more important than anything I discussed today is that your collection is cohesive and it's made very well and finished very well, and that everything in your collection is merchandise and works together. That's more appetizing to a buyer than the color story that you pick. But your colors have to make sense together. That's part of the merchandising. So you do have to pick complementary colors, but I would not ever restrict myself to feel like if I don't know what the hottest colors are right now, I can't design a collection, um, because you're the designer. So, and a designer is not somebody, honestly, who follows somebody else's trends. And that's why I said in the very beginning, I said that these trends, the way that people have always discussed trends, and that's color too, is really for the fast fashion market. Because the fast fashion market is taking from what's at the very top and bringing it down. They're looking at other designers for information. But if you are a designer, you don't look at other people for information. That information comes from you. You determine what the best colors are for the season. So I personally would never look at the colors of the season because I don't know why somebody else would tell me which colors are important. So that's how I look at it. And I think that you have to position yourself to be like, I live in whatever part of the world, and it's not America, or it's not. So maybe the information that I'm getting is different. So the colors that I see around me, based off of where I live right now, they should be this. They don't have to be the same colors that somebody that lives in Britain told you that those are the right colors. And so I want to give you the formula in order to think about how to create everything, but it really should come from you. And what matters most about the color discussion, that is the takeaway, is how to build your color story. That's why I try to talk about what it is that you have to do with the trends more so than what the trend is itself. So how to build a color story that looks cohesive altogether and not look like different items that are all over the place. I think that that is more important than one color. Can I blend my culture and color trend for a particular year for the world market? Definitely. That's actually, I think that that's a better way to do it, because when you start doing that, you're going to build your identity. And that's what's going to help your brand have an image. And then maybe over time, you will learn that, you know what, yellow is our core color. Every time I do yellow things, they sell really well. People love it, and it becomes part of your identity. And then that's like the strongest thing that you can have. That's your color. Just like when you think about Hermes, they're always going to have that orange. Their packaging is orange. When you think about that, like, brands have colors. If you're a brand that is an innovative brand, you have your own colors. You don't wait for anybody to tell you which colors you have. And if you have your own culture that you want to represent to the world, no one can tell you, what your culture is about. That's coming from you. So I would say blend your culture, look at your history, look at the colors that your people or your culture has put out into the world, and take the ones that you like and mix them with a neutral palette. That's color building that I would do, because neutrals are always going to be present. There's always going to be ivory, there's always going to be tan, there's always going to be black, there's always going to be brown. Those are colors that always sell no matter what. And those are core colors. If you start with those and always have them there, then you build in, if you want purple, if you want whatever colors, you add in there, then you will always have a color palette that will work whenever. It wouldn't be something that would be temporary. Again, building something that's timeless, building something that's classic, building something that can work for you for years. And I would focus on it that way. Like, and if you have a lot of colors from your culture that are important, I would pick one pop color every single season and keep adding to it instead of putting all of them at the same time. Again, I wouldn't go more than 5 colors when you start, and then add from there. And I think it's different for different things. I think it's different if you make basketry. I think it's different if you make, if you weave fabrics, you're going to need more colors. It just depends on what your artisanal, trade is. And so I would say for sure, that'll be more impactful, because you can talk about it. You can tell the buyers, a story. This color palette is based off of this, traditional item that was worn by these people, and this is what they did, and this is why this color has significance. And then you stand there, and everything that you're saying is rooted in truth because it's yours. And so I would approach it that way. Yes.
Okay, guys, I think if we don't have any more questions, we can maybe close this session. Robert, Zarin, thank you very much. WFTO team, Mimi, thank you so, so much for this very interesting, inspiring, packed, and full presentation. Thank you all. Do not forget to fill up our little survey form, which will be sent by the WFTO team. And Zerin is just sharing it already in the chat. So if you can, if you have a few minutes, do it now before you forget. If not, please do it sometime. It is very, very important. We get your opinions on the contents so that we can plan for more sessions, better sessions the next time around. So as we said, this is being recorded. You will have the recording available in the WFTO hub. And also, I think, please do correct me if I'm wrong, the links are gonna be sent to all the people who registered via email. The slides as well will be available, and looking forward to see you at another occasion for the Gate to Fair Trade project. Thank you very, very much. Have a good morning, a good day, a good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Again, Zerin and Robert, thank you so much for your support. Mimi, thank you very, very
Thank,
much for your participation.
thank you guys. Thank you so much.